What are all these strangers doing on my land? Sandra, I'm Ryan. And you are?
We're using your property for our neighborhood gathering.
No, you most certainly are not. My father passed away just 3 days ago.
Such a shame, sweetheart. But vacant lakeside property shouldn't sit idle. We're showcasing its potential with 60 guests.
You commandeered my family's retreat. We upgraded it. And you owe us $4,000 for catering and entertainment. I owe you for seizing my property. This is community development, not theft. Sandra, enjoy every last moment of your party. That's more like it. See how reasonable you can be when you try? My father left very special arrangements for uninvited guests. What arrangements? Military engineers are extraordinarily imaginative about home security. By midnight, Sandra, you'll never forget this place. What you're about to hear is the story of how Sandra invaded the most defensively engineered property on the lake, because she never thought to ask why a combat engineer spent 4 decades quietly building it. My name is Ryan Calloway, and 6 weeks ago, I believe the worst thing about losing my father was the grief. I was completely wrong about that. Dad was Gerald Calloway, Army Corps of Engineers, 2 tours in Southeast Asia, 32 years designing infrastructure that could withstand anything the world threw at it. When he retired in 1993, he found his little piece of paradise on Cedar Lake. 50 acres of old-growth pines, a hand-built dock, and a lakeside cabin packed with 4 decades of father and son memories. Approaching that cabin always meant stepping into Dad's world. The rich bite of pine resin hanging in the summer air, the satisfying crunch of gravel under boots, worn soft by countless weekend visits. Inside, the faint metallic ticking of his old service compass on the mantel, the low whistle of wind channeled through gaps he de-engineered for ventilation, and other purposes he never fully explained. Dad was always tinkering. Motion sensors camouflaged as decorative owl sculptures. Pressure plates hidden beneath garden flagstones. What he called woodland hospitality features, delivered with a slow wink. Son, you never know when uninvited company might need a proper welcome. He'd chuckle, running another hidden wire beneath the dock planks. That cabin wasn't just real estate. It was where Dad taught me to fish, to build things with my hands, to think 2 moves ahead of whatever problems stood in my way. After Mom died, it became sacred ground, the only place where Gerald Calloway, decorated combat engineer, could simply be my father. Cedar Lake used to be a working-class paradise. Electricians, nurses, firefighters, people who saved their whole lives for a piece of waterfront to call their own. Then, about 6 years ago, wealthy retirees from the suburbs discovered it. Property values exploded. A homeowners association materialized seemingly overnight to enforce community standards. Translation: economic displacement dressed in civic clothing. Enter Sandra Whitfield, 54 years old, HOA board president, 4-time re-election winner. Picture this, a salon-perfect platinum bob that never moved in wind. Coordinated resort wear that cost more than most monthly mortgage payments. A pearl-white luxury SUV with custom plates. She demastered the art of delivering ultimatums in the same cheerful tone a kindergarten teacher uses to announce quiet time. Sandra had relocated from some planned community outside the city where neighborhood diversity meant owning both a wine fridge and an espresso machine. She could discuss maintaining property character and attracting quality residents with the breezy confidence of someone who had never once questioned whether she belonged somewhere. My first encounter with her happened 2 days after Dad's funeral, when I drove up to begin the impossible work of sorting through 4 decades of memories. Instead, I found official paperwork taped to the front door. Property Standards Notice. Immediate remediation required 16 infractions. Our weathered dock was non-conforming. Apparently natural wood grain violated aesthetic standards. Dad's wildflower meadow was attracting inappropriate wildlife. Butterflies, apparently. Our hand-carved mailbox post showed Inadequate community presentation. Total demanded improvements. $9,000. Daily fines accumulating until full compliance. The sound of expensive gravel interrupted my reading. Designer boots that probably cost more than Dad's monthly disability check.
Oh, you must be Gerald's son. That voice, honey on top, still underneath. Sandra Whitfield, HOA board president. Such a tragedy about your father. She surveyed the cabin like a health inspector who'd found exactly what she was looking for. 40 years of careful craftsmanship reduced to substandard housing stock. Your father seemed perfectly nice, truly. But Cedar Lake is evolving toward a more refined demographic. We're cultivating an environment for families who appreciate elevated living standards. She paused meaningfully. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in a community better suited to your situation. There's a lovely manufactured home development about 15 minutes inland. Much more appropriate for your needs.
The discrimination was surgical, never referencing income or background directly, but making her meaning unmistakable. Working-class families weren't welcome in Sandra's vision of lakefront paradise. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about dock maintenance. This was systematic economic warfare, designed to clear out the original residents and replace them with luxury development. Sandra Whitfield had been methodically targeting every veteran teacher and tradesperson on the lake. She had just made her biggest strategic error, because Gerald Calloway hadn't only taught me fishing and carpentry. He'd taught me that bullies only prevail when decent people give up. And he'd left me a very specific inheritance for dealing with exactly this kind of trespasser. 2 weeks after that first meeting, Sandra escalated to full-scale institutional warfare. She filed a formal complaint with county code enforcement, claiming our cabin posed environmental hazards and immediate safety risks to neighborhood children. The complaint wasn't just paperwork. It was a masterpiece of bureaucratic manipulation. Sandra organized a fake, concerned neighbors petition drive, going door to door with professionally altered photographs. Dad's decorative owl sculptures became unsightly property blight. Our weathered dock transformed into a structurally compromised hazard requiring immediate engineering assessment. She even staged evidence. I watched through Dad's old field binoculars as Sandra dragged waste from her own recycling bins, scattered it around our dock, then photographed it as proof of neglect. But Sandra's real talent was community pressure. She cornered elderly Mrs. Harrington at the mailbox, implying that supporting me might affect her own property assessment. She suggested to the Nakamura family that one problem property could drag down everyone's home values. The scent of fresh pastries always announced Sandra's approach at neighbors' doors, sweet incentives accompanying bitter ultimatums. 3 days later, County Inspector Dale Perkins arrived for his emergency assessment. Sandra's SUV was conveniently parked at the golf clubhouse. During his visit, probably coordinating their story over cocktails, Perkins walked our property like a man following a prepared script. He found violations that would have required supernatural vision, septic concerns based on absolutely nothing, dock deficiencies that had survived 40 years of lake storms, electrical violations for systems installed to military specifications.
I'm going to be straight with you, son, Perkins said, avoiding eye contact. This property needs $18,000 in immediate remediation, or we're looking at condemnation proceedings. $18,000 for problems that had materialized overnight.
That evening, I put Dad's intelligence training to work. He always said during our evening fishing sessions, know your enemy as financial motivations before they know you're rewatching. Public records revealed the elegant corruption underneath. Sandra's husband's company, Whitfield Properties LLC, had acquired 7 lakefront lots in 20 months, all following identical harassment campaigns targeting working families. Inspector Perkins moonlighted for the same remediation contractors he recommended to violation victims. His wife handled part-time accounting for Whitfield Properties. Sandra's attorney, who drafted every threatening notice, was Perkins's regular golf partner and the development company's registered agent. But here's where it got truly interesting. While documenting Sandra's systematic targeting, I discovered her own extensive property violations. Her unpermitted dock extension jutted illegally into public waterway. Her landscape lighting violated the exact same aesthetic standards she cited against us. Her property line fence encroached 4 feet onto county right-of-way. Sandra Whitfield was a walking code violation who made a career of citing others for code violations. Plot twist incoming. Just as I finished assembling evidence of her systematic hypocrisy, Sandra pulled her nuclear option. She filed an emergency restraining order, claiming my surveillance activities made her fear for her personal safety. My countermove. I'd anticipated exactly this escalation. Every piece of documentation had been gathered from my own property using Dad's legally owned equipment, completely legitimate. But Sandra had just created a paper trail of false accusations I could use against her later. The temporary order was granted immediately. I was prohibited from approaching within 200 feet of Sandra Whitfield, or accessing my own dock area, the exact spot where I'd scattered Dad's ashes just 4 weeks earlier. The judge accepted her performance about a mentally unstable veteran clearly struggling with grief-related psychological issues. My father's death had become courtroom evidence of my supposed instability. Standing in my front yard, legally banned from the water, where Dad had taught me to tie flies, and read a current, I heard the loons calling across Cedar Lake, his favorite sound at dusk. Their haunting cry mingled with the diesel rumble of Sandra's landscaping crew, busy improving her own illegally modified property. She illegally barred me from Dad, his memorial site, while simultaneously violating every law she'd used to harass my family. But Sandra had made a fatal tactical error. She'd weaponized a soldier's death and underestimated his son's capacity for patient, strategic planning. I walked back into the cabin, breathing cedar and pine, and opened Dad's property blueprints from his military footlocker. 40 years of mysterious improvements suddenly made perfect sense. Sandra didn't waste time celebrating. Within 48 hours, she escalated to psychological warfare disguised as community safety. A fake lake security committee meeting at the community center, complete with professional invitations and catered refreshments. The meeting was pure theater. Sandra had prepared a slideshow featuring our cabin with ominous music and dramatic lighting. Dad's memorial dock became a hazard attracting transients. Every image was weaponized propaganda. Our weathered wood became structural decay indicating mental negligence. Dad's garden sculptures became signs of psychological instability. His 40-year-old flag was labeled aggressive political messaging designed to intimidate neighbors.
This property has clearly become a community liability, Sandra announced to 70 nodding retirees, displaying photos of me fishing at dawn, captioned as suspicious pre-dawn activities and possible substance abuse behavior.
Meanwhile, I was applying Dad's old intelligence principles. Let the opposition reveal their tactics while you document everything. I installed discreet surveillance equipment that looked like ordinary yard decorations. Trail cameras disguised as birdhouses captured every approach. Motion sensors and decorative stones monitored property lines. Audio devices inside Dad's weatherproof owl sculptures, a trick straight from his military years, recorded everything. The system revealed Sandra's systematic trespassing. Every Tuesday and Friday, while I was supposedly at work, Sandra conducted safety inspections of my property. She photographed everything, measured distances, made detailed notes for future violation reports. Plot twist incoming. On November 3rd, my cameras caught Sandra's evidence staging operation in full detail. She dragged beer bottles from her own recycling, scattered them near my dock, and photographed them as proof of my alleged drinking habits. My countermove. Instead of confronting her immediately, I let it continue. Every staged photograph, every fraudulent document, every trespassing incident was building my legal case.
The audio recordings were pure gold. Sandra's phone calls with her husband revealed their entire strategy, We need documentation showing deteriorating mental stability. Make it appear organic, concern neighbors, not targeted harassment.
But Sandra's nuclear response was filing another emergency injunction, claiming my counter-surveillance constituted stalking. The court order arrived with devastating precision. I was now prohibited from any monitoring or recording activities that might make Sandra feel unsafe in her neighborhood. The legal manipulation was breathtaking. Sandra had turned my legitimate security measures into evidence of threatening behavior, then used that manufactured evidence to expand her control over my actions. Sandra's confidence was peaking, and that made her reckless. Emboldened by 2 legal victories, she announced an emergency HOA vote to seize my property under acute community safety provisions. The timing was surgical. She descheduled the vote for November 15th, exactly when I'd be at a mandatory IT security conference in Rochester. She'd researched my work calendar, ensuring I couldn't defend myself against her manufactured accusations. The meeting notice arrived with bureaucratic menace. Emergency session, Resolution 52C, immediate property acquisition under community safety provisions. She'd orchestrated a perfect ambush. Professional folders containing staged photographs, fabricated incident reports, and edited audio clips made normal property maintenance sound like military preparation. But cracks were appearing in Sandra's coalition. Longtime residents like Margaret Flores questioned the extreme tactics. The Yamamoto family discovered Sandra had filed noise complaints against their weekend projects while exempting her own identical construction. Mrs. Harrington confided to Margaret that she de-signed documents without fully understanding them after Sandra promised to handle everything appropriately. Working families were realizing they were watching systematic economic displacement disguised as property management. Meanwhile, I was remotely activating diagnostic tests on security systems Sandra didn't know existed. Dad's engineering was beautiful in its subtlety. Rustic cabin features were sophisticated automation disguised as woodland charm. His garden sprinkler system could deliver more than water. Motion-activated lighting provided illumination with additional capabilities. The dock's weather protection mechanism served multiple functions. Every system had backup power and wireless connectivity from Dad's retirement projects. 40 years of preparation for exactly this scenario. My real surveillance breakthrough came when hidden cameras captured Sandra's husband on my property with a construction crew. They were measuring foundation points and discussing demolition schedules after the anticipated acquisition. Demolition permits were already filed. Contractors were scheduled. Plans were finalized. Sandra's harassment was cover for predetermined theft with immediate destruction of Dad's legacy. Plot twist incoming. During her latest trespassing expedition, Sandra discovered some of Dad's visible security devices and panicked completely. Her call to her attorney was recorded. There are cameras everywhere. What if he's been documenting our planning sessions? My countermove. Every device Sandra found was a deliberate decoy. The real security network remained completely invisible, documenting her criminal conspiracy in real time. Sandra's response was hiring a security consultant to sweep my property for recording devices before her party. What she didn't realize was that Dad, as real surveillance, used equipment embedded within the property as natural features, impossible to locate without government-grade detection sensors. But Sandra, S. most desperate escalation, was attempting to bribe Sheriff S. Deputy Marcus Webb with campaign contributions and country club membership, seeking to delay any law enforcement response to trespassing complaints during her victory celebration.
The recorded conversation was textbook corruption. We just need you to stand aside if any calls come in about our community event. This unstable veteran might try disrupting our peaceful gathering, and we can't have police interference with legitimate community activities.
Standing in my actual hotel room in Rochester, maintaining a perfect alibi while monitoring everything remotely, I watched Sandra's complete unraveling through hidden cameras. Her final call to her attorney revealed the depth of desperation. "We re in too deep to stop now. The demolition crew is scheduled for Monday. The condo pre-sales are finalized, and we've spent the entire development loan. If this acquisition fails, we lose everything." The pressure had transformed Sandra from a calculated predator into a cornered animal. Perfect. Desperate criminals make fatal mistakes. Sandra's victory party was set for 7:00 p.m. the following evening. Catered food, a live DJ, 50 guests celebrating on property she was stealing through systematic fraud. She'd even hired a photographer to document her triumph over the problematic military element. Dad's 40-year security system was about to provide Sandra with a lesson she'd never forget. The morning of Sandra's Endra, his party brought her most corrupt escalation yet. Systematic bribery of local officials and media. Manipulation designed to frame me as a dangerous threat. By 8 a.m., Sandra was working the phones to every county official who might respond to complaints about her illegal celebration. She contacted a local news station, claiming I was a mentally unstable veteran with documented trauma issues planning to violently crash a peaceful community event. Meanwhile, Sandra's setup crew systematically erased every tribute to Dad's military service. They removed memorial garden stones to create dance floor space, cut down the flagpole where Dad's colors had flown for 40 years, and painted over foundation engravings marking his service dates. Sandra was erasing 4 decades of veteran pride to make room for her celebration of theft. Her party decorations celebrated new community leadership and improved property management. A banner reading, "Cedar Lake's Bright Future," hung directly over the spot where I scattered Dad's ashes. The psychological cruelty was calculated and complete. Plot twist incoming. Hours before the party, Sandra's security consultant discovered that my absence was actually a genuine documented alibi. Hotel records and conference attendance confirmed I was truly in Rochester. This only made Sandra more reckless. Believing I might still find a way to interfere, she hired additional security and expanded the guest list, reasoning that more witnesses would legitimize her community event. More people meant more evidence of mass trespassing. At 7:44 p.m., our surveillance feeds showed guest attendance crossing the critical threshold. Dad's weight sensors detected over 50 trespassers concentrated in the Memorial Dock area. Every automated system armed simultaneously. Sandra raised her champagne glass for the victory toast, completely unaware she was standing directly over the pressure plate that would provide her education about the difference between temporary advantage and permanent consequences. I activated Dad's masterpiece from my hotel room in Rochester. The lesson began at exactly 8:06 p.m. The dock's pressure-sensitive planks detected 50-plus trespassers and executed their primary function. Controlled retraction, designed to safely deposit every single party guest into 3 feet of cold, muddy lake water. The sequence was perfect choreography. Sandra's makeshift podium collapsed first, sending her tumbling into the shallows while still clutching her champagne flute. Wealthy retirees in designer evening wear followed like dominoes, splashing into lake water that hadn't been warm since August. But Dad's engineering wasn't finished. As soaked guests attempted to climb out, the automated sprinkler system activated throughout the property, spraying everyone with biodegradable purple dye mixed with harmless adhesive. The compound was impossible to wash off for weeks. A permanent scarlet letter identifying trespassers. Motion-activated speakers began blasting military cadence songs at maximum volume, echoing across Cedar Lake at decibel levels that rattled windows 3 properties away. The DJ's expensive equipment shorted out spectacularly when lake water hit the electrical connections. Sandra's luxury SUV, along with every other upscale vehicle, was locked inside the property by automated gate systems that had detected unauthorized entry. $50,000 worth of BMWs, Mercedes, and Cadillacs trapped like animals in a pen. Channel 9's investigative reporter Diana Park captured everything with professional camera crews positioned on public property. Her telephoto lenses caught Sandra's complete meltdown in high-definition detail as she realized her victory. Celebration had become a viral humiliation. Sheriff's Deputy Webb arrived with backup units and arrest warrants prepared by our legal team. Sandra Whitfield, you're under arrest for breaking and entering, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted bribery of public officials, and civil rights violations, Webb announced with evident satisfaction. His handcuffs clicked with metallic finality around Sandra's purple-stained wrists. Sandra's public breakdown was spectacular. Soaking wet, covered in permanent dye, and facing federal charges, she screamed at the cameras about undeserving people who don't understand their proper place in society. Her true motivations poured out in a torrent of privileged rage that confirmed every discrimination allegation in Dad's evidence files. Margaret Flores led a standing ovation from longtime residents who had gathered to witness the moment. That's for targeting our families, she called out, applauding the purple-stained chaos. Our attorney arrived with federal investigators and emergency court orders dissolving every legal harassment Sandra had orchestrated. All previous restraining orders are immediately voided based on fraudulent evidence. Mr. Calloway's property rights are fully restored. The community response was spontaneous celebration. Working families who had suffered Sandra's harassment for years watched their tormentor led away in handcuffs, covered in purple dye that wouldn't fade for weeks. Cedar Lake's neighborhood group exploded with messages. Sandra's husband attempted to flee in his own purple-stained vehicle, but was arrested at the property gate on conspiracy charges. Their development company's assets were immediately frozen pending criminal investigation. The technical elegance of Dad's system was its non-violent precision. Nobody was seriously injured, just thoroughly humiliated and permanently marked as trespassers. Standing on Dad's dock, legally restored to my access, I delivered my statement to the cameras. My father served this country for 30 years, defending the rights that people like Sandra Whitfield tried to take from ordinary families. He taught me that bullies only win when good people stop fighting. Tonight, Dad's final lesson worked exactly as he intended. 6 months later, the legal consequences were everything we'd hoped for and more. Sandra Whitfield received 4 years in federal prison for civil rights violations, conspiracy, and racketeering. Her husband was sentenced to 6 years for financial fraud and bribery. Inspector Perkins received 3 years and lost his pension for corruption. Their attorney was disbarred and sentenced to 2 years for fraud. Whitfield Properties filed for bankruptcy within 90 days. Every property they had acquired through harassment was returned to original families at below-market rates, funded by liquidating Sandra's personal assets. But the real victory was Cedar Lake's transformation. The new HOA board, elected after Sandra's criminal conviction, voided her authority, implemented bylaws protecting pre-existing property rights and cultural diversity. Anti-discrimination policies carried legal enforcement mechanisms with automatic attorney fee coverage for harassment victims. Community funds were established to help working families fight future corruption. The Gerald Calloway Memorial Fund now provides legal defense grants for military families facing HOA harassment nationwide. Weekend retreats at Dad's cabin host veteran families recovering from similar battles. The sound of children's laughter echoing from the dock where bullies once threatened. Eviction creates exactly the kind of community Dad had always envisioned. Property values actually improved once authentic neighborhood spirit replaced artificial gentrification. The Defenders Initiative, established using funds from Sandra's fines, has grown into a regional organization providing practical support for harassment victims. Free property rights education workshops teach families how to document abuse and gather evidence. The program has successfully defended over 50 families and secured criminal convictions against 15 corrupt officials. Dad's security system remains operational as both memorial and deterrent. The purple dye sprinklers serve as a gentle reminder that trespassing carries colorful consequences, while motion sensors ensure the property stays protected. No one has tested the system since Sandra's party, but neighborhood legend keeps potential troublemakers at a respectful distance. The cabin stands as proof that ordinary families can defeat institutional corruption through intelligence, preparation, and the refusal to surrender. Dad's military engineering provided the tools, but community solidarity made victory possible. That's what Gerald Calloway spent 40 years building. Not just a cabin, a fortress for the people who needed it most. 3 years in federal prison. That's what Sandra Whitfield received for billing a grieving son $4,000 to clean up her own illegal party. She made the classic mistake. She assumed Ryan was just another struggling veteran who didn't know property law. What she didn't know was that Gerald Calloway had spent 40 years turning that lakeside retreat into a legal and physical fortress disguised as a fishing cabin. Every owl sculpture hid a camera. Every dock plank was pressure sensitive. Every sprinkler could deploy purple dye that wouldn't wash off for weeks. All of it perfectly legal, perfectly documented, and waiting for exactly the kind of entitled trespasser Sandra turned out to be. The beautiful part wasn't watching 60 party guests get deposited in lake water. It was watching Sandra's development company collapse into bankruptcy because they borrowed against profits from property they never actually owned. Her husband got 6 years for conspiracy. Their attorney was disbarred. Ryan didn't just win. He dismantled an entire corruption network using his father's final gift. Makes you think about your own HOA, doesn't it? How many Sandras are out there right now, targeting families they assume won't push back? Drop your worst HOA story in the comments, and hit subscribe if you want more episodes of bullies learning expensive lessons, right here on HOA Story Lab. The smallest tyrants always fall the hardest.